So, Germany at the end of World War I. We've got them in a very poor state. We've got the blockade which from Britain has led to a lack of food and supplies. People are starving. We've got riots breaking out. The Navy's mutinied against the Kaiser. The Kaisers realised the situation is hopeless, so abdicate in October 1918. Remember, this is before the war ends. Germany's left without a leader and in a mess. The biggest political party in that time is the Social Democrats. So their leader, Friedrich Ebert, takes on the job of running Germany. And he's a Democrat and tries to improve people's lives. So you've got questions here that you can test yourself with. And there's the answers. So, first thing you might need to know about is the Spartacist Revolution. So, January 1919, the German Communist Party decides they want to take over. So this is your first protest. You've then got this revolution happening on the 6th of January. Not successful. Remember, the Freikorps defeat them. So the Freikorps are the ex-World War I soldiers paid to help the government keep order. They stop the rebellion and kill the communists. Main leaders, Luxembourg and Leibniz, are murdered. It was helpful for Ebert, the Spartacists no longer a threat. So that's your left-wing threat. Right? So in terms of political instability, you're going to have the idea of this. Remember the source that we've looked at before, where it's about interpreting the ideas. The fact they don't think it's going to last long. The fact that they don't think the workers will get much out of it. Another problem is that the Freikorps are relied on to keep order. So he, as a leader, looks weak, and it's risky because the Freikorps can turn against him. They've shown that they're the ones with the power. So again, some questions just to get you thinking and testing your knowledge. Constitution. They win the January 1919 elections. They call the first meeting is in a town called Weimar. So that's where we get in the Weimar government. Remember, they leave Berlin because it's too much violence. It's too much violence. They write the new constitution. Most democratic at that time. Everyone over the age of 20 could vote. People are voting for MPs who can sit in the Reichstag. They would suggest the new laws. Chancellor would be the head of the Reichstag and voted every 4 years. There would then be a president who would choose the Chancellor and keep control and be voted for every 7 years. You will need to evaluate it. So if you think about this could come in two different bits. You might get a source. So it could be one of the 4 marks looking at the inferences. It might be one of the 10 marks looking at kind of a source about the Constitution. It might also be a 6 mark getting you to explain. Know both sides. Right? So it's fair. Lots of people have their say. Local issues, one person, only around for a short time. It is also the most democratic at that time. On the other hand, remember the whole idea of proportional representation. You get the percentage of the seats decided by the percentage of votes. That means lots of minority parties come into power. Right? It also means it's really difficult for the government to have a majority, which makes it unstable. Also, it means extremist parties can have a say, and they have representation in the Reichstag. Article 48. This meant that the President, in times of an emergency, could get rid of democracy and make all decisions. So within this democracy, you have got this element of potential for dictatorship. That's going to be worrying when people like Hitler get into power. State governments could pass laws that go against what the Reichstag wanted. Right? So it's almost too democratic. Treaty of Versailles, you know this already. I'm not going to go through all the points for you. You need to know how they were punished. Right? It's there, it's straightforward, it doesn't need explaining. Think about the reactions to the diktat, the dictated peace, the stabbing them in the back. They're the terms to get, if you're going for the higher grades, I want to see you using. Right, I'm going to put this out and then explain. Okay, so, other opposition. Communists continue to have the riots. We've got the Freikorps we've mentioned already. Once the Treaty of Versailles is declared, the right wing also hate the Social Democrats. The Freikorps go against Ebert, as we've said. We know about Kapp and the Kapp Putsch. The right wing. Remember, these are the ones who protest against the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Right? It's this time the workers that help them. We've got the political murders. Right? Make sure you're aware of those. And assassinations are basically showing how much people dislike. This is an inference. So for the 4-mark question, this is an example of an inference. It shows. So in terms of your answer for that 4-mark question, this source suggests. It shows. Right, in terms of the Nazis, originally German workers, Hitler joins in 1920, becomes its leader. It's renamed. New flag, new army. He's making it into a professional group. It's small, we meet in beer houses. Right, think about beer houses, it's where people are going to be, they're chatting, they're having beer, it's very social. Hitler's speeches. Remember, as an ex-soldier, he kind of can appeal to the popular support and against the Treaty of Versailles. Also, you've got people beating up opponents. So they are violent, but they also look like they are in control. (1923), you're going to need to know this. Oh, sorry. In fact, you know, in terms of what happens. Pays reparation in 1921, can't afford to 1922. We've then got France and Belgium preparing or decide to invade and take by force. They invade the rural, the industrial areas. We've got this passive resistance. They don't use violence, they can't afford to use violence. So what they do is they go on strike, they refuse to make goods, sabotage factories, flood mines. We've got the violence in respect. You may get a source which shows some kind of violent scene. Because the Weimar government support the strikers, they have to pay them their wages, so they just simply print out more money. Right? Okay, because there's more money, prices are out of control. This is a really good fact to try and use to explain. So try and remember how much it costs. We've got wages home in wheelbarrows. Remember, it's going up fast. Middle classes and elderly, their savings go. Alright, so that's a really important point to bring in. Hitler then chooses that to attempt his Munich putsch. He thinks this is the moment that he can seize power. Right? If fails, he goes to prison, publicity and Mein Kampf. Hyperinflation ends because of this Rontenmark. You need to be able to explain how Stresemann controls it. Get some of the figures to support your points. You then need to look at to what extent this recovery. So between 1924 and 29, you've got Stresemann in his two roles. Dawes plan. Let's look at the economy. You've got the Rontenmark being introduced. Don't just list them, explain them. So the Rontenmark restores confidence. The Dawes plan is this loan. He reduces reparations. International relations in terms of the Locarno Treaty, joining the League of Nations. 1928, promising not to go to war with each other. Increases the amount of money and foreign goods, so there's much more of a revival. Alright? Some people aren't always approving of it. Everything looks beautiful. But it's not. One of the things that you did wrong last time is that you just either identified it or you kind of didn't explain why those policies. The explanation points explain why. You also remember you've got that source question as well about the economic crisis. Support it through facts. Does it fit with what we know? Yes. In 1929, it goes wrong. Because America's economy collapses, all the money that they had lent Germany, they want back. We then have the Depression, unemployment goes high, people lose their home, living on the streets, or on rubbish tips. Right? They don't print off more money this time, it gets worse. Alright? You do not need to explain how he comes into power, but you do need to have a sense of the going through. Alright, so at this point he's able to use these ideas. Don't worry too much about this bit. What you do need to know is how he comes into, what he's doing in those what they call the wilderness years. So between 1924 and 1929. He's building up his propaganda. He's building up his army, right? He's getting his publicity, his speeches. Remember, they lose seats, but their membership increases, so it is still a success, right?